Hello and welcome to Exploring the Field, Equity and Arts Marketing, a session of the 2021 Arts and Cultural Equity Studio Collection. I'm Jarrell Jenkins, Local Arts Services Coordinator with Americans for the Arts. We've got a great program planned today and I'm so excited to get started. But first, some quick reminders. ArtsU is our e-learning platform offering a variety of training options to support your work in the field. You can visit us at artsu.americansforthearts.org to view upcoming events. There will be time for questions near the end of today's webinar. You can use the chat box today for questions, comments, and thoughts, or raise your hand to unmute and ask questions. You can raise your hand by selecting reactions at the bottom of your meeting window and selecting raise hand. There are automated closed captions available for today's event. You can view these by selecting the CC button at the bottom of the screen and select Show Subtitle. Today's PowerPoint or any additional resources will be made available to you under the Resources tab on the event page. Please note that this presentation is being recorded and the recording will be available sometime next week. And you can use the link for today's webinar to access that recording. And so with that, I am happy to pass it off to Nikki Kirk, Equity and Arts Leadership Program Manager.
Thank you, Jarrell. And welcome, everyone. As Jarrell mentioned, my name is Nikki Kirk. I'm the Equity and Arts Leadership Program Manager with Americans for the Arts. I'm a Black woman wearing a black poncho with a white and black headband. I'm joining you today from the unceded lands of Osage Nation and the Kaskaskia people. I want to start off by welcoming you all to our very first session of ACES, the Arts and Cultural Equity Studio. ACES is a new program series that will host professional development collections for both emerging and mid-career leaders. The next two sessions in this collection are focused on equity and community arts programming on December 13th and equitable philanthropy in the arts on December 16th. And in the new year, we will host ACES sessions on a quarterly basis, alternating between emerging and mid-career centric themes. We hope you join us for those as well. Without further ado, I want to invite our guests today to introduce themselves, Donna Walker-Kuhne and Mark E. Smith, and they will tell you a little bit about their work as well. So I'm going to share my screen for a couple of slides here.
Thank you, Nikki. So hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I'm very delighted to be here with all of you to just talk a bit about the field of marketing and my work. I'm an African-American woman, brown-skinned. I have shoulder-length locks, and I'm wearing pink glasses today and a pink sweater. I coordinate my glasses with my clothes. It was one of the things I did during the pandemic. I have quite a few pair. It's quite fun. So my career story, first of all, I am fourth generation post-slavery. I'm a daughter, sister, mother. I am direct result of the Great Migration from the South to the North. My parents came to Chicago from Florida and Georgia in the 1950s. And we lived in a very tightly knit African-American community on the South side of Chicago. And that definitely created a very secure nest of my identity, but also safety. And then I continued to live in that world. And then I joined African Dance Company and started performing. And again, deepening my appreciation of my cultural legacy and the impact the African culture has had worldwide since the beginning of man. And then going to Howard University Law School, again, deepening my cultural legacy from legal perspective and historical perspective and the footprints that we've made in integration and transforming the legal system. And so all of that led to my becoming an arts administrator. And so that happened, after I finished law school and moved to New York, I started practicing family law, family court. And I missed the arts impact in my life. So I started doing volunteer work at a performing arts organization, the Thelma Hill Performing Arts Center, which was located in Brooklyn. And from that, I learned that I could apply my skills from law to the field of the arts and make that bridge really robust. And so my volunteer time started to extend until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And judges were looking for Counselor Walker because I'm across the street having a great old time at the Performing Arts Organization, filing, reading what proposals look like, press releases. Like, wow, I bet I could do this. So I decided I found my passion, and I resigned and wrote a grant to hire myself as managing director, the Thelma Hill Performing Arts Center. And, you have a salary. And I did that for a year, and then I moved to, and then I got I sent my red letter to Arthur Mitchell at the Dance Theater of Harlem, because I really wanted to be in that world, ballet, and with, African-American legacy. And the day my letter arrived, the marketing director had resigned. It was 2 weeks before their New York engagement, and the ticket sales were quite modest. And so Mr. Mitchell called me and he said, I got your letter. Can you sell tickets? I said, yes. And I was hired. And that began my lifelong journey as an arts administrator with the Dance Theater of Harlem, and took me around the world with the company and wearing many different hats, but definitely utilizing every single skill I have learned up until that point. So you don't leave anything behind. You take everything with you to really be unique and dynamic in our work. And so, that after 9 years with the Dance Theater of Harlem, I got a call from George C. Wolfe, who had just arrived at the Public Theater in New York, asking if I could create a new department called Community Affairs that would essentially create an audience that looked like a subway stop. That was my job description. And so I said yes, after 9 years working in Harlem, and then, moved downtown in New York, working with George, incredible visionary, truly, truly a unique, marvelous experience. And that took me to Broadway. So in addition to Shakespeare in the Park, plays at the Public Theater, also Broadway, and I had the platform to create innovative ideas and ways to engage audiences and community. And then after 9 years there, and I started to start my family, I realized I really wanted to have more time. And that's when I hung up my shingles and opened up my company. That was 20 years ago, formally, where we, became a legal entity, Walker International Communications Group, and began my work there. So with clients from all over the world, and traveling and writing and teaching. So it's an opportunity to bring everything together. So there were 3 life-changing moments that I did want to touch upon that have really enabled me to see the impact of the arts, but also, as I said, to stay grounded in my work. The first one was with Dance Theater of Harlem, when we integrated the Civic Theater in Johannesburg, South Africa, 3 months after President Mandela had been released from prison and was now installed as the president. And working with the white South Africans there as part of the advertising campaign, and realizing the shift from apartheid now descending and to this rise of Black leadership, and what that meant in the midst of a ballet company from Harlem coming in to integrate this theater. It was really quite amazing. And so one day I went in advance, because I was the marketing director and I had to establish the campaign. And one day I went in to have the meeting, and they said, let's give you a tour of the theater. And as I was walking around the theater, I saw the workmen put their tools down and stood up. And my guide said, do you know what they're doing? I said, no. And he said, they're paying homage to you because you're the first Black person to walk through this theater space as a free person. No one's not working here, but as someone that is, a peer to them. So I thought, wow, that was in 1993. The second time was at the Public Theater a month after 9/11. And as many of you know, the country was in still a state of shock when New York was almost paralyzed. And I had developed a program called Free at 3, where we presented different arts groups. And we had already scheduled this program with Rita Dove, who was then the poet laureate, and several other writers that were going to share their poetry. And we were torn between, should we do this or not? We decided the arts lead the way, we're going to do it. And if 3 people come, that's fine. So more than 3 people came. The room was completely full. And as Rita Dove read her poetry, I saw people close their eyes and lift up their face as if receiving the words as a balm, really soothing. And I could see people came seeking solace. So that showed me the healing power of the arts. And then a few years ago, when I was in Moscow teaching, theater professionals had shared with them about the film Selma, documenting Dr. Martin Luther King's historic walk and how important it is to engage community and young people to teach them about the civil rights legacy. And so I was just talking about this film and all the things that we did around it. And then the next day, the students came in and they looked really solemn. I said, what happened? They said, we watched the film Selma. Next time, start with that. Because I had assumed they all knew what was going on in America. They understood racism. They didn't have any context for that. So that was a real teachable moment. Next slide. So in terms of, my career trajectory and how I found my way to what I'm doing currently, I started with audience development in the 80s, pioneering that work. We weren't even calling it that. We just knew people were missing, let's get them in, meaning Black and brown people. And then I was able to really polish that with the Dance Theater of Harlem and really create programs that would capture, the leadership of the Black community as we toured around the country. We call that our National Audience Development Task Force. And I've used that model everywhere that I've gone to work. And so then fast forward, and I was invited to come to the New Jersey Performing Arts Center as the Vice President of Marketing. And while doing that, I did realize that many of the people of color were not coming inside the building. There seemed to be this disconnect. And I proposed that we create a community engagement department. So not just an offshoot, but a separate department with a dedicated budget with leadership and staff, and that was approved. And so I was able to start community engagement efforts, and that has been absolutely amazing. We have, over 30,000 people that come to community engagement events annually. We produce 200 events that are off the campus, and these are all done, with the intent of creating access to the arts. And then from that, NJPAC got on a path of building diversity, equity, inclusion training. And so we've been doing that, but also much of my business is involved in helping other organizations discover what does it mean to build a culture of DEI? How do you do that? And then after the murder of George Floyd, I realized social justice programming was absolutely essential. And that we have to say we want to become an anti-racist organization, and we have to move towards that path. So all of my work has been one thread, and it has been about inclusion. It has been about respecting the dignity of each person's life. And that for me is why I continue to do my work. So the connection is historic from my legacy growing up to all of the work that I've done in all of the genres and all the countries and cities. And what keeps me connected, at the end of the day, I'm a dancer and I love the movement of life. I'm also a writer. My second book will be out in March, will be published in March, and I have a weekly blog, but I identify as an artist. And so I just keep thinking of myself, what's missing? What would I need as an artist to stay connected to community, to the work, to be treated equitably? And so all of that kind of comes together in a very exciting way. So this is my lifelong journey. I will be doing this forever. Thank you.
Hello, how are you guys today? Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about myself, my story, and on how I came to be where I am in this space today. So my name is Mark Smith. I'm actually originally from Chicago as well. I learned that about Donna during one of our pre-conversations a few weeks ago. Grew up on the south side of Chicago. For those of you that know about Chicago and the south side, I grew up in the Inglewood area. If that rings any bells for you, then we're all on the same page. A little bit about my career. I'm the second oldest son of four boys. As I said, I grew up in Chicago. My mom and older brother are still in the Chicago area. I have a younger brother and sister-in-law over on the east coast of Florida, as well as in the Ohio area. My brother just took a new job about 3 or 4 months ago in the Ohio area, so they commute back and forth. Then I have my youngest brother and sister-in-law and new nephew. I'm a new uncle in the Atlanta area. And, you know, we've all grew up in the same type of environment on the South Side of Chicago. And it's an interesting story for myself as to how I came to be in this space that I am now. One of the questions I always get from people when I'm about in the community and doing my work is, are you a curator? Are you a museum director? Are you an artist? Did you go to school to be an artist or a curator, or do you have a degree in museum studies or curation or something like that? And none of that is true. I got into this business by accident. And I'll tell you a little bit of a small story or a short story about how that happened. I got my undergraduate degree at Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa, which is in central Iowa. And, you know, my undergraduate major was in hospitality management with a minor in marketing. And I took a very, very untraditional pathway to get to where I am as far as my schooling. You know, I tell people that I'm very, very transparent in how I went through school, how I learned, how I got through school, and how I actually graduated up into this day. You know, I was not on that 4-year plan, you know, 4 years and get out of school. I was on the 5.5-year plan, which means that I did some messing up while I was in school. So I had to start over and find myself and to finally get out of school. And so finally, when I got to that point where I knew I was graduating, I believe in it was a spring semester. By this time, I had already taken all my major courses and all the things I needed to do in order to graduate. So I'm filling in the schedule for the next semester. And so at this time, I don't want to take anything that's hard because I've already got my GPA back up to a respectable level. And so I don't want to take any classes that's going to ruin that for me. So I can remember this like it was yesterday. I had a golf class, I had a racquetball class. I had a couple other easy courses, and I was looking for 3 more credits to fill this schedule. And I had some specifics about this particular class that I wanted. I wanted a class that was in a large lecture hall, about 500-600 students, so I can just kind of go in and get lost. And if I didn't show up, no one would notice. The other thing is that I didn't want to get up early. I didn't want an 8 o'clock in the morning class. I wanted something like mid-afternoon. So 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock would be perfect. And I didn't really want to work hard because, again, this is my last semester and I'm graduating. So what did I do? I picked an art course. And not only did I pick an art course, I picked an art history course. And those of you that are in this business and maybe on the curatorial side or the museum studies side or arts administration side, you know exactly where I'm going with this story. As I grew up in Chicago, I was not exposed to museums. I was not exposed to art. I had a good friend of mine who was a great artist, and I always wanted to draw like him, but I had no skills of drawing art at all. The only type of art, well, which I can see as art now, back in the day, it was called graffiti. And then in my neighborhood, it was gang signs. That was the only type of art, quote unquote, art that I was exposed to. So moving forward, going into this college course of art history, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had no idea that the art history is the baseline course that you take that will springboard you to everything, all arts, curatorial, nonprofit, things like that. So I say all that to say this, it was a pretty hard course. I passed the class. I think I got, I believe, a C or a C minus in the class. But the thing that it did for me, it opened up my eyes to a whole new world that I knew nothing about. I had no clue about art museums and all of that and everything that falls into that particular category. So I took this class and, you know, graduated, I believe that next semester. And as soon as I graduated, went back home to Chicago. And the first place I went to was the DuSable Museum, which is over on the south side of Chicago in the Hyde Park area. The second place I went to was the Art Institute of Chicago. because again, growing up in Chicago, I had never stepped foot in that museum. And when I went into that museum, I started looking at all of the different artwork and things like that. And I started trying to remember the class that I took and trying to relate all of the information that I learned in that class, like different art periods, the different styles of art, the different artists that represented those different styles of art. This is the class where I learned about modern art. I learned about Baroque art. I learned about the Renaissance periods and things like that. And so this is the class that I took that just opened my eyes to a whole new world. And ever since then, everywhere I've traveled, in every city, even outside of the country, one of the main things that I always do is schedule a trip to 2 or 3 different art museums, or museums period in that particular, those particular cities or particular countries. So if you look at what I do right now as head of marketing and communications for a large brand museum like the John and Mabel Museum of Art here in Sarasota, Florida, it's kind of a not a dream come true, because I didn't dream this. I didn't make this up. This wasn't the path that I was going to. But if you look at my history from that class that I took in undergraduate school, I had no idea that I would be here today. And what you see on the screen here, this first slide here, I just kind of put up a little bit about our marketing team here. I have 7 people that report to me on my marketing team here. And this is kind of our team mission and goals. And it's not that much different from any other marketing team, whether it's in a museum or a nonprofit or dance company or performance company. But basically our goal is to market this huge campus, which is over 6 acres of land here. We have several different buildings, and to make sure that we make an impact and make an imprint for an impact with our brand into the community, into the Florida community, the Florida local community, regional community, and statewide, as well as internationally. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay. Here on this slide, and I wanted to intentionally put this slide in, and this is our equity statement here at the Ringling Museum. I'm part of a group called IDEA. It's an acronym for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access, and I'm part of the core team. And I was part of the core team to help put together our first equity statement here at the Ringling Museum. This particular equity statement feeds into our strategic plan for the entire institution. And I like to share this information with people because we came about with this equity statement around the same time that I guess it was about 2 years ago during the George Floyd murder. And there was a lot of other inequities and murders and just terrible things going on in our country when it came to people of color. And so just like all other art institutions in the country, everyone came out with an equity statement. Everyone came out with a diversity statement, and we did the same thing. But the one thing that I did, because, I didn't want us to be just a rubber stamp type of organization and put down another equity statement or another diversity statement to let people know, yes, we're on board with the whole DEI thing. And you guys know what I'm talking about. I wanted to make sure that we were intentional about what we're doing. I wanted to make sure that we were intentional about our plans. And I wanted to make sure that our audience and our community understood not so much where we're going, but where we came from. Those of you that are in this field, and you know this, I'm not telling you anything new, but historically, large brand museums, basically large white museums, have never ever been inclusive to people of color. We've always been on the outside looking in. And so with this equity statement, it says a lot, but as I continue to tell people here at our institution, the equity statement is just a piece of paper. That's the easy part. The hard part is actually doing the work. And, I continuously tell people every single day, whenever I have issues going into certain things that I'm doing from a marketing perspective, I bring them back to the equity statement. I bring them right back to the board approved equity statement. And so when you do that, it helps to hold people accountable. And that's what I like to do. Like I mentioned, you know, the Ringley Museum is a large institution. We are a part of Florida State, the Florida State University educational system. It's just that we're here in Sarasota, Florida, and the university is in Tallahassee. You know, when I came to Sarasota 3 years ago, it was a big deal. I can tell you when I got here, everybody wanted to meet me. I'm assuming you can probably understand the reason why. I'm a Black man, educated Black man, I like to say. And let me, to kind of go back a little bit, I'm wearing a black jacket, black rim glasses, and I'm fairly dark skinned young man. So just for those of you that needed that description. But to have that description coming to a place like Sarasota, Florida was very, very, very different. The folks here had never seen me before. I believe I am the first person of color, the first African-American man to hold a high-level, senior-level position at this institution. And so I came here, there's a lot of expectations, but I don't think they really knew that I was going to come here and do some of the things that I've been done thus far, and I'm not done yet. So, but this is a big deal. So, you know, and I don't want to go too much into about me because I want to get into some of the questions in the Q&A session like that. But the last question here, what connects me to this work, what keeps me connected to this work is the people. You know, if you followed my career and if you knew me, if you followed my social feeds and things like that, I'm really into people. I'm really into community engagement. And I look at marketing as not just someone who runs a department, who has several people that report to him and sit behind a desk and shout out orders. I look at marketing specifically in this particular community, in this role, as a person that that really connects with the community, the Sarasota community, the Manatee County community, as well as the community in Florida as a whole. I want people to know who I am, what I'm doing, and how I'm trying to bridge the gap between the arts, nonprofits, museums, and the diversity, equity, and access in the DEI space. And so that's what keeps me connected to what I'm doing. I love what I do. I've been doing this type of work for I guess several different cities that I've lived in thus far. And you know, I guess I'm one of those non-apologetic types of energy type people that I'm going to get the job done no matter what. There's always going to be challenges, especially when you're a person of color in the marketing field and in our business. There's always going to be challenges, but I came here with a purpose, and I will accomplish my purpose until my purpose is done. Then I'll move on to the next place, wherever that may be. But for right now, I'm rolling up my sleeves because I got a lot of work to do. So thank you.
Thank you both for those introductions. And I want to move to some of the questions that we have here, and just also want to remind folks, if you have questions and you're joining us, you're welcome to put those questions in the chat and we'll get to them, or you can raise your hands as well. And if you want to do an anonymous question, you can just directly send it to me, Nikki at AFTAF. So, you know, through those introductions, we got a good sense from both of you of your connection to IDEA. I like that, or DEI work. And so I want to know a little bit more about how does that kind of show up in the work that you do in marketing. What does equitable practice look like in your work? How is that woven and embedded? How do you advance equity within your organization through the marketing work that you do? And I'll start with Donna.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, equity, of course, is critical because, we can walk into the door and just, as, Mark had said, just, shouting out orders and telling people what to do, or we make sure that we create space where everyone feels they belong, that their voices are heard, that they are valued, and that they have the opportunity to be as honest and transparent as possible. That's when I think you get the best work, when you can bring all of yourself to the office, all of yourself to work. So when you have to parcel off a piece because, oh, they won't respect this, or no, I can't, say this, or maybe I can't wear this. I remember starting my work at Dance Theater of Harlem. I would have never been able to wear locks. Mr. Mitchell just would not have allowed that. He's very classical in his aesthetic. And everyone, whether you were one of the ballerinas or you worked there, wore your hair in a bun. So I wore my hair in a bun because that's what was required, but that was not necessarily all of me. And so I think today, we talk about this new normal. I think it is definitely creating environments where the people that we want to advance the art are able to do this in the most healthiest way and the way filled with most joy. And so that comes from knowing that when I walk in, the people I work for and work with care about me. Those are the tools that I think we really want to establish deeply. And then there's also, just pay equity. So again, back in the day, we just took whatever pay we were given, but that's not happening so much today. There is a serious demand for pay equity. There's a whole new area of law, that is focusing on pay equity in the arts and really looking comparatively at what this kind of work should do, whether it's in an arts environment or not, or what should the salaries be, what kind of benefits. We know that the work flex schedule is now part of the equitable environment where, what we learned during the pandemic is that we can still get the job done from home. And so why do we have to stop that? And so, again, arts organizations are really dealing with, how do they set up those kinds of standards so that you can have that work flexibility, you have the pay equity where we're increasing the salaries so that they honor the kind of work that we do. So those are real, I think, opportunities, that we have to look at. As a marketer, it's also how we message the work that we do. Are we always just going to use the same people, the same style and message, or is this opportunity to open that up so that we make sure that the marketing materials reflect the demographics that we want to engage? That requires being very intentional, because the low-hanging fruit is what we grab the first. It's like, okay, we can use these photos, let's just use this. But does that reflect the people? Does it reflect the community? So the equity means that I'm being very conscious of making sure that at the table are the people that we are representing. And if there's someone missing, I'm being very proactive to bring them in, whether it's their voice, whether it's their image, it's the language, how do we narrate this? All of those are very important elements.
That's a good point, Donna, and thank you for bringing that up. As a marketer, I've been doing this work for a long time now in the arts and culture space. I've also had a stint in the corporate world early on in my career as well too. And back then it was all about I was young in the business and I wasn't really thinking about equity and diversity because I didn't really understand it. I knew about affirmative action and things like that. But as I've grown professionally in this business and professionally as a marketer, matured professionally as a marketer, the one thing that I have learned to do is to bring my authentic self every single day to the table. Because I want people to know exactly what they've got, who they've hired, and what I'm about. Because, and I mentioned this to Donna and Nikki before in one of our earlier meetings, I don't code switch no more. I'm done with that. Code switching is a thing of the past. What you see is what you get with me. And that is the attitude that I take into my job and when I'm marketing this institution. I'm trying new things. I'm doing this way. I'm head of marketing. This is what we're going to do. Obviously, if my boss, who's the executive director, feels we need to do X, Y, and Z this way, of course, but I'm always going to give him a reason why we need to be doing it this way, especially when it comes to people of color, because one of the big challenges here, and it's not just here, but lots of large brand museums, is that where are the people of color? Are they coming through the doors? Are the exhibits situated and planned where people of color, when they come through the gates, they'll see themselves in the images, they see themselves in the advertisement, they see themselves in the exhibitions and things like that. Unless it's an African-American museum, yes, but usually in spaces like this where we have large, we have one of the largest, if not the largest, collection of Peter Paul Rubens art in our galleries. Well, I'm just going to be upfront. Most black and brown folks don't know anything about that. I would not have known anything about that art, that style of art, unless I took that art history course. So you're going to be hard pressed trying to get someone from the South Side of Chicago or from the neighborhoods here in Sarasota, a person of color, to come and see art like that and appreciate it. So what do? We need to go out into the community. We need to infuse ourselves into the community, i.e. marketing, and start educating people on these types of images, this type of art. And at the same time, you need to make sure that you're being inviting to people so that they do feel welcome once they come to our spaces as well too. So equity is a big thing. Diversity is a big thing. I always try to make sure that I have a seat at the table, whatever table that is, okay? And the other thing is that I don't want just to have a seat at the table. I want influence at the seat of the table. And if I feel like I'm not getting influence or having influence at the seat of the table, I will let you know that, hey, my influence is weak here. I need more. I need shared influence here, I'm not afraid of letting people know when I'm not satisfied. And when you're in this type of space and this type of environment, these people, they're not used to seeing that. They're not used to hearing that. But as I mentioned before, when it comes to, DEI these days, we have to be bold in the spaces, in the platforms that we have. And I realized once I moved to Sarasota, Florida, and started working here and living here, it didn't take me long to realize the platform that I had here. It also didn't take me long to realize how uncomfortable that I would make people here with my platform. And I see that every single day for the last 3 years. But like I said, I don't code switch no more. What you see is what you get. So I'm going to make sure that in any type of marketing piece, advertising piece, that I have something to do with it, it's going to represent a diverse community in what we're presenting, because if I don't do that, then it will never happen. So that's what I try to do.
I guess pulling from something both of y'all kind of commented on is this notion of representing your community, making sure that people have a seat at the table and what that looks like. I guess my question in that sense is, how do you balance community representation in your marketing materials and all of that versus what can be seen as maybe performative representation of Black and brown faces? So maybe if you don't have content within the museums that necessarily are attractive to those audiences and those communities, how do you kind of balance that line?
Well, I think that speaks to Mark's point about, authenticity, and also integrity. And so the balance comes from the culture. And that's why what Mark's program is doing there at the museum is so critical. The work that, we have established at NJPAC, but also with my other clients, building this culture of, inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility is critical, because then it is performative. Then it is just, okay, we do this so we can check it off the list. But when you do the work, this is work. When you do the work to transform your fundamental beliefs about people who are different from you, then that resonates throughout the decisions that you make, so that it becomes organic as opposed to reactive. And so the work is long-term, and we have to lean into that work. So the discomfort, of acknowledging that, my biases prevent me from thinking that it will be valuable to have people of color involved in, my marketing strategies and how we inform programming. So part of the problem and this is a problem, part of the problem in the nonprofit sector is the silos in which we do our work. So marketing and programming should be so interconnected that you actually can't even see the difference between the two. How we inform what programming we choose to do, and how the programming then can affect the marketing. How can we make sure the artists help us with our community engagement? There's just these holes that make it very difficult, I believe, to build this culture of DEIA that we are discussing. And so I think removing the performative component is not something that is instant. It's not like taking an aspirin, but I do believe that by building this journey and making this commitment that this is who we want to become, which is why making the statement to be an anti-racist organization is critical. Because, understanding what racism is, which is having these feelings of dominance, authoritarianism over a different group of people. And so if you're not addressing that, then how do things change? So anti-racism means I am being very clear about my intention and my efforts to not subscribe to that behavior and thinking. And so it's building that infrastructure that then removes the performative gesture, and you realize how important it is to dignify the work and the communities that we're working with.
And to build on that also, you have to build trust in your communities. And when I say in your communities, I'm also talking about communities of color, because we are also taught instinctively, from way back in slavery, to not trust. And so one of the things that I have to do within my own community that I'm a part of is to build trust within that community, to let them know that, hey, I'm here. I hear you. This is not another box check for the institution and what have you, because people aren't stupid. They've seen this before. And so I make sure that I built trust with people here. I've built networks. I've built, made friendships, with different people here. First, build that relationship. And so now that I have these relationships, it's been 3 years now. Now I can go out into communities and talk more about what we're doing at the museum. And it's easier to bring people here, whereas they wouldn't even cross the street, a while back, because automatically they already knew they weren't welcome. Well, this is a lot of personal sweat and equity for me. Just go out into the communities and just kind of break bread with folks and hang out with folks and just talk. That's what we have to do, and break down those silos. But it's building that trust, not only in the larger community, but within our own community as well, so that people know that this work that we're doing, it's for real. It's just not a rubber stamp. It's for real. I'm making it authentic and for real. So
That's such a critical point. Thank you so much, Mark, because as you said, we are accustomed. We, meaning Black and brown people, are accustomed to the promises. That if you do this, we're going to give you that. And so why should I trust you just because you look like me? No, I got to know more than that. And the way you demonstrate that is to stand with them, to be side by side, to really get to know them. So that's an integral component, I think, of any marketing director's work. If you're relying on email and phone calls to build relationships, you are sadly misinformed.
it won't
Being
work.
a marketing director means you are boots on the ground. You know the people that you want to engage. You know their families. You're standing in the lobby welcoming them when they come in. And you're finding and thinking of ways that you can align them with the mission of your organization. So you're inviting them to be part of your advisory councils and ambassadors and all of those things. Without all of those efforts, then it becomes very much just a gesture. So, marketing director's work is very challenging. It doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. That's just a new shift that comes on at 5 o'clock.
Right, and I want to get on to if there's other questions to get on, but I want to add just one more piece onto that for what you just said, Donna. I had to convince the folks here, even my team and our executive team, that I will not sit behind a desk 7, 8, 9 hours a day and be a marketing director. To me, that is not being a marketing director. A marketing director directs the marketing process, the communications process, but a marketing director also is in the community and building relationships. That's marketing too, as well. It's in some sense it's community engagement, but it's also marketing, and it's extending the brand, and it's extending the brand out to communities that are disenfranchised, communities that would not even come through our doors. And that's the whole goal. Again, everything that I do, whenever I get pushback, I bring it back to the equity statement, because that's how you're going to hold people accountable. Bring it back to the board approved equity statement, because if you're going to tell me, no, you can't do this, what you're actually saying is that, no, we didn't really vote on that at the last board meeting. That was just for play. That's just for show. No, that's a real thing. And so whenever you get pushback, and this is just a message out to all of you that are out there, if you have equity statements or if you have strategic statements where you're trying to build your brand and expand your profile in your institutions with more people of color, the way you hold executives or top brass accountable, bring them back to that equity or that diversity statement or what have you, that piece of paper that the board approved, because it speaks volume. It really speaks volume, and it garners you more respect that you're not playing with this thing. You're for real. So.
Yeah, and I think, one of the questions that's coming in and kind of ties into what you've been talking about, and as we're all still kind of living in this pandemic world, what has been the shift and how you've adapted? The question that came in is how can you actively engage with national communities in the way that you're describing with more local communities? And I think some of that shift and some of that adaptation may have happened, especially during the pandemic, where we've had to figure out different ways to reconnect with our communities that are not so hands-on or in-person hands-on. So maybe you could talk to that a little bit.
Well, I mean, Donna, did you want to?
No, please go ahead, Mark.
Well, we did the same things that probably all of you guys did. Everything was online. Everything was Zoom. I mean, we, when the pandemic hit, we shut our doors back in March of 2020, like most museums, and we went to a strict online programming where actually we did a lot more work in engagement in the community through our online process than we did in person. And so we learned a lot from that process, from the online process. I think we've kind of perfected it now. So so I keep it, that those assets in my, my back pocket as far as what I do now in marketing to reach out to people. Because, even now, some folks are still a little bit timid about, coming into different spaces and stuff like that, especially now that we have this new variant that's on the rise. But the online space, digital space, I think taught all of us, a lesson that, hey, you know what, we can still connect and engage people online. I think it just has to be a lot more intentional, and just some different types of strategies. But I think this is the kind of the space in the world that we live in now. And nothing takes the place for a face-to-face conversation and handshake and things like that. I will always prefer that over a computer or something like that. But I think we have to be proficient in both spaces. So
I agree, Mark. Again, at NJPAC, we went virtual a week after we closed down March 12th. And fortunately, we could be nimble because we have a superb marketing department, that we could place much of our programs in the virtual space. So we started our dance workshops every Wednesday, offering a different type of dance movement. And sometimes we would have 200 people dancing in their kitchens and living rooms, having a good old time because we couldn't go out. So let's have fun, and made it, very accessible for everyone. We also called all of our stakeholders and our influencers, and we asked them, how are you doing? How's your family? Is there anything we can do to support you? And people really appreciated that. So just showing our humanity was also very important. Not always transactional conversations, but just how are you conversations, quite valuable. And then we, started being a part of the Performing Arts Center's community engagement monthly calls. And in fact, I think those calls are even more frequent than monthly. I don't remember, but we knew as a national platform for community engagement and arts education directors, we needed to unite and support each other and share best practices. That became extremely rich, having those calls and sharing what we're doing, but also the struggles, because there was also a lot of downsizing of staff. So there's one person left, and it used to be 5. How do I still put my programming out? How do I choose which ones to do? And just the feeling of isolation, we address that as well, and how we build community through this virtual space, and realize there's a richness in that as well. So my goal is that we don't lose any of that. That's why we experienced it, because it was something we needed to build. And so if we're smart, we're going to look at what did we learn during the quarantine in particular that enabled us to continue to further our work and bring a richness to it that may not have been there before. So bringing that forward in the hybrid environment, because I believe hybrid is here to stay. There's always going to be people who just don't want to come out and don't have to. You can still have a great arts experience from the safety of your home. And so how building that is the opportunity marketing directors now have in front of them. I hope we approach it with great rigor and joy, because this is the new norm.
Thank you both. I know we're coming close to time, so I just want to end with kind of one final question to both of you. As you envision that the future of arts marketing and what that looks like, what advice would you give to folks entering the field, folks kind of currently in their first few years in the field? What do they need to succeed? What would you tell them?
Curiosity, commitment.
I would say, be curious, be committed, be intentional, but in all, be bold in what you're doing.
Own it.
Own it.
Just own it.
Yeah,
and say, this is what I think. Always with respect and integrity, so you can be heard. There's one strategy of being the person in the room that's always challenging. Okay, but you challenge in a way that you are acknowledged and people want you in the room because you suggest other innovative ideas as opposed to being combative. And so I think it's also important, the demeanor that we bring to our work. I think emerging marketing directors want to also find the lane. Where do you feel most comfortable? Where do you really love to do? What makes your heart sing? Is it digital marketing? You know, is it the advertising component? Is it community engagement? What is that? And polish that so that when you look at hopping around to different organizations, your reputation precedes you because you've now become an expert in that particular area. And so you can be a generalist, you know, and I think I can do all kinds of marketing, great, but I would suggest also refining the area that you're passionate about, because the passion produces the brilliance.
Yeah, marketing is a wide, broad field. And so you need to find your space, your path.
Yep.
In that particular marketing field, and once you do that, you'll know it.
Everybody else too.
Yeah, and everyone else will too. So, but be intentional and be bold about it, and it'll come. So.
Amazing. Thank you both for this conversation, Donna, Mark. I really appreciate this, and I'm sure everyone joining us does as well. I want to just remind folks that if you're interested in community arts programming or philanthropy in the arts, join us for the next sessions in 2 weeks. And I will toss things back over to Jarrell to close us out here.
Thanks so much, Nikki. And thanks so much to our speakers today, Donna and Mark. We really appreciate you. A reminder that this event was recorded and will be available for replay. Before we say goodbye today, I wanted to mention our upcoming event, the National Arts Marketing Project Conference, happening virtually December 7th and 8th. You can hear from industry experts, increase your professional networking skills, and expand your knowledge of arts marketing tools. All of this happening at NAMC. So register today if you haven't already. I'll drop the link in the chat now. There are also registration support opportunities available. We do hope to see you all there. So in closing, stay tuned for the recording. And in the meantime, you can visit us at artsu.americansforthearts.org for other training opportunities and resources. See you next time.
Thank you all.